Okay, I'm going to try to show the use of a Strymon Timeline as an overdrive pedal. It's hard to video and play and do all this stuff at the same time, but I'm going to do what I can. So this is my board, and you can get an idea of the setup I'm using. I didn't really want to do it in this amp, but this is an amp that I built out of a 1955 reel-to-reel tape machine. But it's just the one I had the easiest access to. Anyways, pay attention to all those knobs on the timeline are in the positions that you'll need to set your timeline to. In other words, I'm in the lo-fi. My mix is full, wet, repeats are all the way down to 0, and time is all the way down to 0. Filter all the way down. Grit, turn that all the way down for now, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Modulation all the way down. So basically everything down and mix all the way up. When you go into the parameters, this isn't too important, the sample rate and bit depth. I turned the bit depth down enough where it got kind of nasty, but if you go too far, it starts to get kind of noisy. I have it all the way to, I don't know what the L stands for, but that's dry, and that would be wet, I guess. But I don't know what the L is. Anyway, almost all the way over. This is where it gets important. Vinyl app off, by the way. Add it if you want, I don't want it. So it has all these filters. Filter number 1. Let me look in my book, I wrote all this stuff down. Anyway, here's where I keep track of all my timeline patches. Filter 1 is a vintage amp, filter 2 is a Victrola, filter 3 is a 70s clock radio, number 4 is a bullhorn, like an electric bullhorn, like a cop bullhorn. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 is a megaphone, that's like a cheerleader, like a plastic megaphone. 6 is an old telephone. 7 is a cell phone. And 8 is an intercom, like you'd have in a high school or something. Anyway, I'll go through all these, but for right now, I have that filter 1. That's the vintage amp. That's where we're going to start. And beyond that, did I boost it a little bit? Yeah, I went up 2 decibels. Just because it kind of thins out the tone. Anyway, let's get into the system here. I've also programmed all this into my Boss ES8. You can see in the display there as I go through these. It goes to Victrola, clock radio, bullhorn, megaphone, etc., etc. Let's start with the vintage amp. I'm going to have to set this down and talk. Let me just set that right there. So, first let me give you my guitar signal without the timeline as I showed it to you. So here's just my dry guitar signal. Pretty clean. Just got a little bit of reverb on there. Now if I click back on that timeline in the way that I showed it to you, see it kind of thins it out. It's running it through that filter, and this is a filter for a portable vintage amp. So it thins it out. Now, I've got my expression. This is a homemade expression slider I made. On the timeline, it has this grit. And that's always been used for adding some degradation to the repeats. But we have the repeats all the way down and the time all the way down and the mix all the way up. So all that does is turns it into a filter rather than repeats. Now, if I increase that grit, you'll hear it distorting. So here's all the way back down again. I'm going to play a chord. Now here's all the way up. That's overdriving. But it's some overdrive for sure. And here's the cool thing, it's still pretty thin, which I like that kind of lo-fi. You turn this mix knob, you can mix in some of your dry signal and get a way beefier tone. So let me show you what it sounds like right about there. So you got a little bit of that grit and some nice mix all the way up again. And here's adding in some dry signal. Now I'm going to cycle through a couple of these. Here is the clock radio. Overdrive up and some dry signal mixed in. And this is my clean tone again. And then Strymon back on. Back on. Moving along, I'm going to go to the bullhorn one. Now I have the mix all the way wet again. It kind of high pass filters. Sorry, I wish I could show you what I'm doing here. So if I bring the gain back down, I'll do that on here. Gain back down, grit back down, mix all the way up. So that's no overdrive, just the high pass filtering. Turn this up to bring your overdrive back in. And bring the mix maybe down to there to let in some of your dry signal. Anyway, if you've already got every overdrive pedal known to man, and I'm sure we all do, it's just kind of a cool bonus, you know, just a different flavor. It's kind of, if any of you are doing kind of lo-fi stuff, you can see I've got the Geiger counter on there, so I'm definitely doing some bit crunching and that sort of thing. Anyway, it's a pretty mild overdrive. It's a pretty dirty overdrive. If you're doing anything like, I don't know, Portishead, if you ever listen to any Portishead, I'm drawing a blank on his name. Anyway, what that dude does with his guitar, kind of a funky, lo-fi, degraded tone type of overdrive. Anyway, it's something different. I want to keep this under 10 minutes, and I think we're there.